how digital identity actually works in the UK. When people talk about digital identity, they often think about logging in, a username and password, a code sent to a phone, or an app that confirms who they are. In reality, digital identity in the UK is not a single system, and it is not just about logging in. It is a complex set of processes, platforms, standards, legal requirements, and risk controls that allow organizations to decide who someone is and what they are allowed to do. This video explains how digital identity actually works in the UK. It looks at how identity is established, verified, authenticated, and reused across public services, financial institutions, healthcare, and private sector platforms. It also explains why identity systems are conservative, fragmented, and slow to change. What digital identity means in practice. In the UK, digital identity is not a national identity card system. There is no single government-issued digital identity used everywhere. Instead, identity exists as a set of assertions made by different organizations for different purposes. An organization does not usually ask, who is this person in general? It asks, is this person the same one we saw before? Or, does this person meet a specific requirement? That requirement might be age, residency, eligibility for a service, or authority to act on behalf of an organization. Digital identity is therefore contextual. The level of certainty required depends on the risk involved. Identity, verification, and authentication. It is useful to separate three related but distinct concepts. Identity verification is the process of establishing that a real person exists and that their claimed attributes are correct. This usually happens once or infrequently. Authentication is the process of confirming that the person accessing a service is the same person who previously verified their identity. This happens every time someone logs in or authorizes an action. Authorization is the decision about what that authenticated person is allowed to do. Most identity failures occur when these concepts are blurred or implemented inconsistently. Physical documents as the foundation. Despite digital systems, UK identity still relies heavily on physical documents. Passports, driving licenses, and birth certificates remain foundational identity evidence. These documents are issued through tightly controlled processes and backed by legal authority. Digital identity systems do not replace these documents, they reference them. When an organization verifies identity digitally, it is usually checking details against authoritative records derived from physical document issuance processes. Government digital identity. In the public sector, digital identity has historically been fragmented. Different departments built their own login systems, identity checks, and user accounts. This led to duplication, inconsistent assurance levels, and poor user experience. gov.uk1 login is an attempt to centralize this. It provides a single identity platform that citizens can use to access multiple government services. The system combines account creation, identity verification, and authentication. Verification may involve checking passport or driving license details, performing biometric matching, and cross-checking records. One login does not create a new identity. It creates a reusable assertion that the government has verified a person to a given level of confidence. Assurance levels and risk. Government identity systems operate using assurance levels. Different services require different levels of confidence. Viewing basic information may require low assurance. Accessing tax records or benefits requires higher assurance. These assurance levels are defined by policy and technical standards. They influence what checks are required and what authentication methods are acceptable. This risk-based approach is a core reason why identity systems appear complex and slow. NHS identity systems. Healthcare introduces additional constraints. The NHS operates its own identity systems, including the NHS login service. This system links patients to medical records, appointment systems, and prescription services. Identity verification in healthcare must balance accessibility with safety. Errors can affect patient care. Privacy requirements are strict. NHS identity systems integrate with central services such as the NHS Spine, which acts as a backbone for patient identifiers and messaging between systems. Unlike consumer platforms, healthcare identity systems are designed to minimize harm rather than maximize convenience. financial sector identity, and KYC. Banks and financial institutions operate some of the most stringent identity processes in the UK. Know Your Customer requirements mandate that banks verify identity, address, and sometimes source of funds. These checks are required by law and enforced by regulators. Digital onboarding systems use document scanning, biometric checks, credit reference agency data, and fraud databases. Many banks use third-party identity providers to perform these checks. Once verified, authentication is handled through combinations of passwords, devices, biometrics, and transaction-specific approvals. Banks continuously monitor accounts for suspicious activity. Identity is not treated as a one-time check, but as an ongoing risk assessment. Credit reference agencies and shared data. A key but often invisible part of UK identity infrastructure is credit reference agencies. Organisations such as Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion hold extensive datasets linking individuals to addresses, accounts, and historical activity. These datasets are used to verify identity attributes, assess risk, and detect fraud. They act as de facto identity infrastructure despite not being government bodies. Access to these datasets is regulated, audited, and restricted. Errors can have serious consequences for individuals. Private sector identity platforms. Outside government and finance, identity systems vary widely. Telecommunications providers, utilities, employers, and online platforms each operate their own identity systems. Some rely on email and password combinations. Others integrate with government or financial identity checks. Large platforms increasingly offer single sign-on services that act as identity providers for other services. This creates convenience but also concentrates risk. The UK does not mandate use of any single private identity provider. Choice and fragmentation are deliberate. Authentication methods. Authentication methods have evolved over time. Passwords remain widely used despite known weaknesses. Multi-factor authentication adds layers such as SMS codes, authenticator apps, or hardware tokens. Biometric authentication such as fingerprint or face recognition is increasingly common but usually operates at the device level rather than as a standalone identity proof. In the UK, regulators generally discourage reliance on single-factor authentication for sensitive services. Identity in employment and organisations. Digital identity also governs access within organisations. Employees are issued digital identities that control access to systems, data, and facilities. These identities are managed through directories and access management systems. Joining, changing roles, and leaving an organisation all require identity updates. Failures in these processes are a common source of security incidents. Identity governance within organisations is therefore treated as an operational discipline rather than a technical feature. Fraud and identity misuse. Identity systems exist largely because of fraud. Identity theft, account takeover, and impersonation are persistent threats. UK identity infrastructure includes monitoring, anomaly detection, and reporting mechanisms to manage these risks. Public and private organisations share information through formal and informal channels to detect patterns of abuse. The cost of fraud influences how strict identity systems are. Why identity systems are conservative. Digital identity changes slowly for a reason. Errors can exclude people from services, enable fraud, or create legal liability. Once an identity system is deployed at scale, changing it carries significant risk. As a result, identity infrastructure prioritizes stability, auditability, and compliance over innovation. Regulation and oversight. Identity systems operate within a regulatory framework. Data protection law governs how identity data is collected, stored, and shared. Financial regulators enforce identity requirements for regulated services. Government systems are subject to audit and parliamentary oversight. These constraints shape technical design decisions. Why there is no single UK digital ID. The UK has deliberately avoided a single mandatory digital identity system. Concerns around privacy, centralisation, and misuse have influenced policy. Instead, the UK has favoured federated and context-specific identity models. This results in complexity, but also resilience and choice. Closing perspective. Digital identity in the UK is not a product, it is infrastructure. It exists to enable trust between people and organisations at scale. It is shaped by law, risk, and operational reality rather than convenience. Understanding how digital identity actually works helps explain why logging in can feel complicated, why verification takes time, and why systems are designed cautiously. In the next video, we will look at how payments and financial infrastructure rely on these identity systems to move money safely and at scale.